What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I just want to review the Burris BTC 35 V3. This is a thermal clip-on. So this is a thermal optic that you clip on in front of your scopes, and it allows you to turn your daytime scope into a thermal scope. So here I have my Ruger S-FAR, and I have this Athlon 2.5 to 15 power scope, and in front of it I have the Burris BTC 35 V3 mounted to it. Just want to give you guys my overall impressions of this thermal. I think it's a very rugged and precise thermal for the money. So this is going to run you probably around $2,500 to $3,000, so it is pricey. But if you look at other thermals like this, you're going to pay 2 to 3 times as much, and you won't necessarily get a whole lot better quality and durability. So just want to show you guys some of the features of this thermal. And it is waterproof and shockproof, and the way that this thing works is you have these adapters, and the adapter threads onto the thermal, and then you just slide your adapter onto your objective, and it has this clamp here. So you just slide it over the objective of your scope, and then you clamp down, and it holds it tight. Now, one thing I found out was that if you don't adjust this clamp tight enough, after a couple of shots, your thermal will start to slide off your scope. So you have to make sure you really tighten this adjusting screw here to make sure that this clamp is really tight. Don't worry, you're not gonna break your scope or anything like that, but really good thermal clip-on from Burris. I think it's one of the best thermals out there for the average Joe. Comes with this box. Doesn't really come with a whole lot. Comes with batteries and instructions, and I did get this lanyard off of Amazon. It's actually like a neck lanyard, so I can clip this onto my BTC 35 and hang it from my neck if I'm not using it on any rifle and I want to use it for observation purposes. Now, I have taken this out to the range. The furthest I've taken this to is 500 yards with this rifle right here, the Ruger S-FAR, and shoots great at 500 yards, and at 200 yards, really good accuracy. One thing to keep in mind with a thermal optic or even night vision is that you're not going to get the same level of accuracy as you will with a daytime scope, simply because of the parallax and also the fuzziness of the image. Okay, so even if you have a $30,000 night vision device or thermal device, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to get a crystal clear picture, and that's going to affect your sight picture, okay? So just keep in mind that your accuracy will be a little bit reduced because of the fuzzier picture. It's not going to be as clear, okay? But this thing does have a focus dial, so you can focus this thing to the point where it's really clear, and out to like 500 yards you can easily make out man-sized targets, deer, larger wildlife. You can easily make them out, and even out to 1,000 you can make out man-sized targets and deer and larger wildlife. The clarity beyond 500 yards is still good, but it starts to drop off like beyond 700-800 yards. It becomes a little bit more difficult to differentiate things. So I would say your best range for this thermal is going to be out to 700-800 yards if you really want to be precise. I haven't taken it out to 1,000 yet. I'll do a follow-up video after I take it out to 1,000 and see how accurate it is at 1,000, but up to 500 yards it's been pretty accurate. So got some footage for you guys from the range that I want to share with you, but I think this is really great for the money. and it has a whole bunch of different settings. You do have to zero this scope to your daytime scope, which is pretty easy. I didn't really have to do a whole lot of adjusting. It was maybe off by like 3 or 4 inches at 100 yards. So it's not like it's going to be way off, but you do have to make some minor adjustments, and the manual tells you how to do that. It's pretty straightforward. It's basically like zeroing your scope. You have a windage and elevation knob, and you turn it and you just shoot and align everything. Now, the problem with zeroing a thermal is that you're not going to be able to see paper targets with it. So you need something like a plate of steel that's going to be warm and contrast to the surrounding environment. So my recommendation to you is, if you're going to be zeroing your thermal, get yourself some AR500 steel plates and go out in the middle of the day, preferably in the summer, when the sun hits that metal. It's going to heat up the metal, and you'll have a nice contrast from the surrounding environment. So this way you know where your target is, because if you're just shooting at a cold target or a piece of paper, that's not going to show up on the thermal. So that's the only negative with a thermal, is if you don't have enough heat on your target, then it's going to be hard to get a proper sight picture, and you're not going to basically be able to see your target. So this thing can be zeroed to up to 3 rifles. So you can have 3 preset zeros for 3 rifles. So that's not a whole lot, but that's good enough for most people. I would like to see the ability to have maybe 5 or 7 or 8, but 3 I think is good enough for most people. It's good enough for me. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Very easy to use. There's a whole bunch of features that I'm not going to really spend too much time on in this video, because I could just spend an hour going over all the features. There's about a dozen or so different thermal colors you can pick from. They have the classic blue hot, Predator style thermal. They have white and black. They have the purple and orange. They have like red and white. There's just so many different colors you can pick from depending on what you like. They have red, they have green. I like to use red actually when I want to preserve my night vision. In certain situations, you'll find that different colors will show the target better. So, sometimes the white hot may be better than the blue hot or the red hot or whatever. So you just got to play around with your palette. And they also give you like 3 separate settings. In addition to the 3 preset zeros, you have 3 settings depending on what situation you're in, what environment you're in. The thermal optic will adjust the colors so you can see things better or more clear depending on what you're trying to do. They have the enhanced mode, they have the nature mode, and then they have like a high contrast mode. So if you're just trying to pick out targets in an area and you don't care so much about the details of the environment, you're just scanning an area and you're looking for heat sources, then you pick the high contrast mode. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it basically makes the hot colors very, very bright and the cool colors less bright. So there's a huge contrast between the heat sources and the cooler surroundings, and that'll help you pick out heat sources very quickly when you're scanning an area. Then they have like a nature mode, which is usually what I have it set to. Nature mode is good for if you're hunting or if you're at the range when you're zeroing. It helps you kind of see more of the environment. It kind of functions more like a night vision rather than just the thermal. You can see more of the details of like the trees, the rocks, the ground, so you can kind of see your environment better. So there's more contrast between different things. And then you have the enhanced mode, which I quite frankly don't know what that does, but it's kind of similar to the nature mode. It's just not as pronounced as far as your details go, being able to see everything in your environment. And there's a whole bunch of other settings, but let me just share with you guys some range footage and some footage of this scope so you can see what it looks like when you look through the scope. But highly recommend this if you have the money. I think it's great. And if you want to mount it to different rifles, you just have to get different diameter adapters. So you can have this thing mounted to multiple different rifles. You just need the proper adapter. So that's it. You know, it's very simple. So stay tuned for some range footage, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the video. All right, guys, so here was my hit with the thermal at 100 yards. I was aiming right there, so it's basically dead on. My normal zero at 100 yards is about 1.5 inches high. So maybe I just got to go down about 1 inch or so. But one thing about thermals when you mount them on your rifle is don't expect the same level of accuracy as with a normal daytime scope, because number one, you don't have the same clarity, so the repeatability of your point of aim is a lot less. And number two, you have the parallax factor with something like this where you're mounting something in front of your scope, so you're never going to really get an extreme level of accuracy even with a $20,000 thermal scope. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, but this is acceptable to me. The windage is fine. I was trying to aim right here. So, you know, maybe I'm just a 1/2 inch to the right at 100 yards, which is half MOA, and looks like I'm probably about 1 inch high. So I'm going to make a correction and take another shot. All right, let's check it out. All right, guys, so I took another shot at 100 yards just to confirm. Point of aim was like right there, and here was my hit. So I think I'm pretty much dead on, maybe just slightly high. So that's pretty good for probably just my 3rd trip to the range trying to zero this thing. It's pretty quick to zero. So let's see what my shots were like at 200. All right, guys, so here were my 2 hits at 200 yards. Wow, pretty happy about that. Looks like the windage is perfect. And I'm gonna have to check my reticle, but I was basically aiming right in this area. So if anything slightly low, I don't know, but check that out. Perfect hits, very happy. Looks like the windage is good. I'm probably not gonna mess with the windage. And I just got to double check at 500 yards my zero, and that'll really be the final check. So very pleased with the Burris. All right, guys, so I'm gonna test it out at 500 yards now. Let me just show you guys again the group at 200 yards. So here's my thumb for comparison. So it's probably about a 2.5 inch group at 200 yards, which to me is acceptable for a thermal sight. You know, there's going to be some parallax and blurriness of the image because you're putting the thermal in front of your scope. So when you zoom in, you know, even a $20,000 scope is going to have some blurriness, but let's go see what happens here, what kind of groups I get at 500 yards. And it was super easy to zero this thermal. I mean, it wasn't that much off. At 100 yards, I was maybe like 4 or 5 inches off the first time I shot with it. So it's not like it was off, you know, 2, 3 feet or 4 feet or something like that. So let's see what happens, guys. 500 yards. One hit right here, 500 yards, so that's pretty good. My windage is good. All right, guys, so this is what I see when I look through the scope. And you can see it's hard to make out where that steel plate is now because the sun is going down, the temperature's dropping, and that steel plate cooled off, so I can't tell where it is now. So that's one of the downsides to a thermal scope, is it's reliant on the ambient temperatures, and that can make zeroing a little bit of a hassle. You do have to zero your scope in the middle of the day so the steel plate can heat up. So I want to show you guys what it looks like out to 1,000 yards. So you can see the details are pretty good. So you can actually see all the way at the top of the road on the right. That's where the 1,000-yard berm is, and then towards the bottom is where 400 and 500 yards is. So still a lot of details that you can make out even out to 1,000 yards. And there's actually some kind of animal down there. You can actually see some hot spots. 2 of the hot spots on the upper right along the road are just stones, but there were just 2 animals that walked across near where those stones are. And there appears to be something right now. You can see the red crosshair highlighting it. That could be an animal. And what I'm going to do is just zoom up, and you can see the only downside is if you zoom too much, you lose a lot of the crispness. So that's the only downside I would say, but as long as you keep it like within, you know, 8 power or 10 power, something like that, it's still pretty crisp. But if you go beyond that, then, oh yeah, there is an animal there. You can see it's actually moving now, right on the right side there, on the right side of the screen, lower right. You can see that red spot. You can see it's moving towards the road on the right side. See it right there on the bottom of the scope, just crossed. So we're looking at 100 yards now, and you can see there's quite a bit of details. You can see the berm in the back, and you can see that it's red, and that's because it was hot. And you can see the backer board. You can actually see the targets on the backer board itself. You can see the black squares on the backer board, and you can see the details. So, and sorry about the constant brightness going up and down. That's just my cell phone. So it's auto focusing and increasing the brightness because it's pitch black out, but you can see the actual target papers on the backer board. 2 target papers, and then the backer board itself. Lots of details with that. And you can see the berm being lit up red because it was hot during the day. All right, guys, so I did some more shooting at 500 yards. I went down like 1 MOA, and it appears that we're dead on now. Here were my 3 hits, 1, 2, and 3. I'd say that's really good for barely being able to see the steel because sun's going down and there's no contrast in the thermal between the steel plate and the surroundings because the steel plate is getting cool now. I was able to make out the shape of the plate just barely in the thermal, but as you can see, I was aiming basically in the center, like right in this area, and you can see 1, 2, and 3. So pretty accurate. Look at that, guys. That's really accurate. I mean, here's my pen. So you know, probably a 3.5-inch group with a thermal and no major contrast. So pretty impressive stuff, guys. That Burris is amazing, I think, for the price, the features, the durability. I'm loving it. So I'm going to be doing some more videos with it. I'm going to be shooting further out to 1,000 yards and do some tests at 1,000 yards, but initial review out to 500 yards. Very happy with it, so I highly recommend it. It's definitely an investment, but it's one of those things that, you know, you buy once and you have it for the rest of your life, as long as you take care of it, don't abuse it, don't lose it, don't let anyone steal it. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. Take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.